Part of my practice is deeply rooted in the history of ceramics. Something I think about all the time is how ceramics doesn't have a known history because it has so many histories. It's so much a part of our everyday lives and the objects we surround ourselves with and the objects we use. My name's Ling Datchuk. I'm an artist currently living and working in San Antonio, Texas, and this is my show, Truth Before Flowers. When viewers walk into the space, they're initially confronted by this really large blue babe cave that exists in the middle of the space. The works around it kind of tell the stories and ideas behind the objects of girlhood and womanhood. I thought about the collection of objects that I saw within my own home growing up, of this porcelain Buddha that always existed protected behind a china cabinet for me to look at and value, but to never touch. And it wasn't until later in life where I realized that that Buddha always had boys crawling on him and never girls. So I worked with a Buddha factory in Jindajian, China, where they allowed me to sculpt hairstyles of young girls on the children crawling on them. In Chinese culture, there's a saying where girls hold up half the sky, and I wanted an object in the home that reflected and embodied the equal values as a person. Looking at the tea sets and tea saucers that as a child I played with, of having my own tea party, of sipping tea with my pointer finger sticking out, of being delicate and almost like this civilized act of playtime when I wish I was taught to yell and scream and be vocal about how I was feeling. So this little blue and white megaphone teacup sits there, ready to teach young girls to amplify their voices. When you come around and leave the objects of girlhood, you come to a photo documentation of the image of a woman's abdomen covered in these broken shards. I felt like as you leave girlhood and enter adolescence, so much of what happens in your body is unknown, uncomfortable, and can be kind of secretive unless you have a community of women that really share those truths about those experiences. The broken shards on the body cover and hide the scars, the outward marks, and each of the shards is adorned with gold around the edges. Thinking about the history of Japanese ceramics and kintsugi, of where you repair the broken and adorn it in gold to show that there's beauty and still purpose in the broken. That's the image you see before you enter the babe cave. The installation comprised of fake blue hair. The porcelain beads all have written on them affirmations that I've collected from communities, from social media, and people that I've met along my travels, of the statements and sayings that help carry you along. Those statements that help you go from girlhood to womanhood, of being a woman entering all male spaces, and then a person of color entering all white spaces, and questioning yourself if you even feel like you belong. Those affirmations on the top of the beads help you carry through. It's a collective sharing of these experiences. The table is a blue and white table made in Jindajian, China. The tabletop is thrown on a potter's wheel by a family of two brothers. Their wives are the ones who decorate the tables, and I feel so honored that the family allowed me into their space to spend days in their studio painting imagery that I felt was reflective of experiences I was seeing in the world. Around the table, there are affirmations that I felt were really powerful to mark this time of girl, you can, there will be pain, let go of preciousness, and truth before flowers. That I hope viewers come to this space, that if they are afraid to come in, they can from the outside see the affirmation and take that, or come inside and bring their family, friends, or community to have these difficult conversations. When you leave the space, you come into the wall where the objects of womanhood exist. One of the objects within this is a trophy comprised of a remade figurine from the 70s of a young Asian girl in her bamboo hat, carrying a heavy load across her back and barefoot. She rests atop a base of broken teacup shards. So much of mass-produced porcelain ware has a deep history rooted in colonialism. So much of that is associated with the tea industry, that this history is thousands of years old. And there's decades and centuries of war, espionage, and kidnapping for these precious materials. And that she is exhausted, not exotic. Both objects of girlhood and womanhood have these, what I call truth flags, grounded within the collections. They are inspired by the alphabet samplers that I've been researching throughout this country that were made in the 1800s and 1900s. They are considered the first form of female education here in the United States. They were taught to young girls in schools where they would go, and through learning cross-stitch and embroidery, they would learn the alphabet, or they would stitch their ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, their name, the date, and there was always a morality clause at the end. And researching these morality clauses, they were very much rooted in the history of scripture, but I really love the statements that I've been finding on them, and that fidelity and truth is the foundation of justice, embroidered by Fanny Hills, and Paint Not Crimes and Enchanting Colors by Emily Beale. That how did these two young girls that are around 9 to 10 years old know that their tiny stitches and these sayings have so much power today? I took their statements, and through machine embroidery on a vintage crib pad and through a digital jacquard loom process, that their hands were the ones that created the powerful handmade. The last piece that you see on your way out of the gallery is Goat Girls. GOAT, the acronym for greatest of all time, is a wall piece made of buttons, pins, and brooches, the kind that you wear when you are number one or when you're celebrating a victory or win. And they are made out of porcelain doll slip casting colors. They are tinted and colored porcelain clays made for doll making hobbyists. And they come in somewhat limited range of colors that have also a conflicted history, where the names and the categorization of the colors are now just starting to change to be more reflective of the time we live in. These are representative of all those colors, and then there's the collection of colors within that are mixed half. Growing up as someone who navigates the world as half Chinese, half white, I think about how I never found a doll that looked like me. And I've also lived in places where people didn't look like me. And those were the pieces in Goat Girls that I had the most fun making, in that I get to be able to create these spaces where young girls of color can feel like they belong within this conversation. And while growing up, I've always heard the term half. I love in Japanese culture that you are called double. So instead of being the division of something, you're the multiplication of something. As I've gotten older, I've come to really appreciate and own this halfness, but that being double is actually pretty great.